The way you look floating in a swimming pool today isn't that different from how your ancestors looked 30,000 years ago. Same water, same arm strokes, same breathing. But here's something almost nobody ever stops to think about. How did they figure it out? No coach, no pool, no YouTube tutorial, no one to show them what to do. In a world where water could kill you at any moment, how did our species ever get good at this? The answer isn't they figured it out gradually. The answer is they were forced into it. They paid for it with their lives, and it only survived because people kept passing it down. And here's the part that'll really get you. Swimming is not instinct. It never was. Let's start with something most people don't know. Humans are not born knowing how to swim. Which sounds weird, right? Most mammals come out of the womb and just go. Dogs can swim, pigs can swim, elephants can swim, but we can't. What makes it even stranger is this. If you put a newborn baby in water, they'll actually start moving their arms and legs in a swimming motion. It's a real reflex, but it disappears around 6 months old. Like a switch inside the body just flips off. Done. Gone. This isn't random. Our entire physical design is optimized for land, not water. Our fat is concentrated around the belly and hips, which makes our lower half heavier than our upper half. The moment you fall into deep water, your legs start pulling you straight down. Our faces point forward, not upward, so even lifting your head to breathe takes extra effort. And unlike seals, we don't have evenly distributed body fat to help us float. In other words, we are one of the worst large mammals on the planet at surviving in water. And it wasn't just a design problem. For ancient humans, water was a genuine immediate threat. Rivers had crocodiles, currents, cold temperatures that could kill you in minutes. Our ancestors spent hundreds of thousands of years evolving on the African savanna, built for running and hunting, not swimming. Getting close to deep water was one of the biggest survival risks you could take. So why did they go in anyway? One word, hunger. Not curiosity, not adventure, hunger. When land-based prey became harder to find, when droughts hit and plants dried up, when the savanna stopped providing. That's when a group of early humans was pushed toward the one place they least wanted to go, the coastline and the riverbanks. And there, they found something that changed everything. Food, right there, easy to get. Shellfish, crabs, fish that had washed ashore, no chasing, no hunting, just bend down and pick it up. Scientists now believe that these high-protein, omega-rich foods from the sea provided exactly the nutrients the human brain needed to develop rapidly. Think about what that means. The intellectual capacity you have today, part of the reason it exists, may be because hundreds of thousands of years ago, a group of starving ancestors walked toward the thing they feared most. Not because they were brave, because they were out of options. Then there's the other kind of forced entry, the faster kind. You're in the brush, something's chasing you, there's a river in front of you. Do you jump or not? You jump. No time to think, no choice. You just go. That's the other way humans first entered the water. One way was slow, hunger pushing them closer and closer to the edge. The other was instant, survival throwing them straight in. Neither was voluntary. Quick question. Think about this before we move on. If you fell into deep water right now, no warning at all, what's your first reaction? Hold that answer, because I'm about to tell you that gut reaction back then was basically a death sentence. Let's be honest about what probably happened. The first time ancient humans were forced into deep water, the outcome wasn't, oh, this is swimming, it's not so bad. The outcome was probably death. This isn't speculation, it's physics. When a non-swimmer hits deep water, their legs start sinking first. The body tilts vertical, the head goes under, and then panic kicks in. Arms flailing, legs kicking, burning through energy as fast as possible. Looks like effort, right? But that effort is exactly what makes you sink faster. Panicked flailing burns through your strength in seconds. Once your strength is gone, you go down. This isn't a failure of intelligence. It's what any person does in extreme fear. It still happens today. Every non-swimmer who falls in does the exact same thing. So those first people who got pushed into the water, the ones with no knowledge, no training, no frame of reference, a lot of them didn't come back. And the ones who survived didn't go home and say, swimming's actually not bad. They went home and said, water kills. Stay away from it. That fear spread through the tribe, passed down to the next generation. You might think that's a step backwards, but it wasn't. That fear was the first hard lesson, paid for in lives. Not never go near water, but you had better be ready before you go in. But humans didn't walk away from water. They couldn't. Food was at the water's edge. Migration routes crossed rivers, and the danger was real and immediate, and it kept forcing people back in. Walking away meant dying a different way, so the survivors started looking for another path. Don't start in the deep end, start in the shallows. Simple idea, but in a world with no instruction of any kind, this was a remarkable discovery. The survivors began living near the edges of shallow streams and riverbeds. Not swimming, just standing in the water, feeling the current push against their body, learning how to stay upright, slowly, building familiarity with something that used to terrify them. And then they started watching. Frogs, 4 legs pushing back through the water at the same time, body horizontal, head above the surface. Dogs, fast, constant strokes, head staying out, moving forward steadily. They started copying. That's where the earliest human swimming strokes came from. The breaststroke, named after the frog, wasn't invented by some genius in a lab. It was copied over thousands of years by people who stood at the water's edge and watched frogs over and over and over. This process took generations. Parents passed what they'd learned to their children. Children passed it on to theirs. Trial and error, refinement, transmission, and then somewhere, someone recorded it. This isn't just my theory. There's physical evidence. Deep in the desert of southwestern Egypt, there's a cave, about 10,000 years old. When explorers first walked inside, they found paintings on the walls. People, swimming, clearly visible strokes, what looks like a dog paddle, and what looks like a breaststroke. This place is now called the Cave of Swimmers. It's the oldest known record of human swimming ever found. Here's the part I love. The desert is completely barren today. Not a drop of water for miles. But 10,000 years ago, it was a region of lakes. The people who painted those walls lived right next to the water. They weren't painting something they imagined. They were recording daily life. Swimming, for them, had become normal. Now here's the fact I want you to hold on to, because it matters for everything that comes next. Swimming is a culturally transmitted skill, not genetic, not instinct. You can't swim by default. Someone has to teach you. Which means if the chain breaks, if one generation fails to pass it on, the skill disappears. That's not a hypothetical. It actually happened. Let me tell you something personal here. I didn't learn to swim until I was in my 20s. When I started, I wasn't scared of the water at all. I was in a shallow pool with a coach right there. I knew I wasn't going to drown, so I figured swimming was just a skill. Put in the hours, you get it. I improved fast. Before long, I had a decent breaststroke going. Then one day, I went to the deep end. It started fine. But after a few laps, I mistimed a breath. I swallowed water. In that moment, everything else disappeared. One thought left in my head: get back to the edge. Get out. I don't remember exactly how I made it. I just remember lying on the pool deck, trying to breathe for a long time. And in that moment, something clicked. Before that day, I thought I knew how to swim. After that day, I understood. I only knew how to swim when everything was safe and controlled. Those are two completely different things. The lesson ancient humans learned with their lives. I got a small taste of it in a swimming pool in my 20s. Knowing and actually being ready are not the same thing. Water doesn't care how many laps you've done. It only cares whether you're prepared. After that scare, I didn't immediately go back to challenge the deep end. I went back to the shallow pool. I rebuilt every movement from scratch, made breathing automatic, turned it into muscle memory, something I didn't have to think about. And I specifically learned one skill: treading water. A lot of people underestimate treading water. It's not a swimming stroke. It's the ability to stay still in the water without sinking. Put simply, not moving and staying alive. If you know how to tread water, even if you run out of energy mid-swim, you don't just sink. You buy yourself time. It's the most fundamental self-rescue skill in the water. Once I had that locked in, I went back to the deep end. That time felt completely different, not fearless, just ready. That's the same logic ancient humans worked out over tens of thousands of years. Start shallow, build familiarity, learn to survive first, then learn to go further. Ancient humans spent tens of thousands of years turning swimming from a survival reflex into an everyday skill. But by the time of ancient Greece and Rome, something shifted again. Swimming stopped being just a matter of staying alive. It became a mark of civilization. The Romans had a specific phrase they used to insult someone's intelligence. He has learned neither letters nor swimming. The original Latin, nece literas didicit nec natare. Let that sink in for a second. Reading and swimming, placed side by the Romans as the two basic indicators of whether a person had received any education at all. Not knowing how to swim wasn't a skills gap. It was a sign you weren't civilized. Roman soldiers were required to cross rivers. Noble children trained along the banks of the Tiber from a young age. Swimming had gone from get in the water or die to not being able to swim is embarrassing. Same skill, completely different meaning. And then, right after humans had turned swimming into a symbol of civilization, someone almost wiped it off the map entirely. This is the most absurd chapter in the entire history of swimming. Medieval Europe, roughly the 5th to the 15th century. Swimming nearly disappeared from society altogether, not because there were no rivers, not because there was no water, because people came to believe that water carried disease, that getting in the water would give you the plague. People who could swim weren't admired, they were suspected. In some places, the idea spread that if you didn't drown, if you survived in the water, that itself was suspicious. For hundreds of years, entire generations of Europeans genuinely could not swim. The chain of transmission that had survived tens of thousands of years just broke. It wasn't until the 19th century that armies across Europe realized their soldiers couldn't cross rivers, which meant they couldn't fight. So swimming classes were reinvented, pools were built, teaching methods were reconstructed from scratch. Humanity spent tens of thousands of years learning to swim, then forgot it in a few hundred, then had to relearn it in a few decades. What does that tell you? Skills don't pass themselves down. What feels obvious and permanent can disappear within 3 generations. Today, roughly 44% of adults worldwide cannot swim, nearly half. A species that survived for 300,000 years by living near water. And today, almost half of us would have no way to save ourselves if we fell in. We have pools, we have lifeguards, we have coaches and tutorials, and everything our ancestors could never have imagined. And yet fewer of us can swim than ever. Ancient humans had none of that. No equipment, no instructions, no one to hold their hand. And they passed this knowledge forward, generation after generation, at enormous cost. They didn't learn to swim to stay in shape, not to look good at the beach. They learned it so they could still be alive tomorrow. For me, when I started learning, I thought of it as a leisure skill. Until that moment in the deep end, lying on the pool deck, catching my breath, that's when I finally understood. The water hasn't changed. We're the ones who started believing we were safer than our ancestors. All right, that's where we land today. We went from starving early humans walking toward a coastline to a 10,000-year-old cave painting in the Egyptian desert to Romans putting swimming on the same level as literacy, to the Middle Ages nearly erasing it completely. And then to the fact that 44% of people today still can't swim. One through line in all of it. Swimming was never instinct. It's knowledge, paid for in lives, kept alive by people passing it to the next person in line. If you can swim today, it's because someone, somewhere, made sure that chain didn't break. If this video made you think for even a second, hit the like button. It genuinely helps. And if you want to keep going with this series, how ancient humans figured out the things we take for granted, subscribe. See you in the next one.